Hey there, Detroit sports fanatics. I'm Taylor Phillips, and welcome to episode 44 of Taylor's Detroit Sports on Spreaker. You can also find this and all other episodes of Taylor's Detroit Sports on iHeartRadio. Add me on Facebook as Taylor Phillips Online at facebook.com/PHILL1DT. Like my Facebook page, Taylor Phillips' Detroit Sports page. Join my Facebook group, Taylor Phillips' Detroit Sports Group. And follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips. DT, the number 2, Phillips. In this episode, on Friday, August 29th, 2014, at about 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to talk some Tigers, winning 3-2 yesterday afternoon, walk-off style, and their preview against the White Sox, starting tonight through Sunday afternoon, and some minor league moves, some more minor league moves, plus I think they should still get Bartolo Colon in to replace an injured Anibal Sanchez, who still isn't ruled out for the remainder of the season quite yet. But the Tigers need a fifth starter to, fill in Sanchez's shoes. Also, we're going to talk Lions shutting out Buffalo, and Ndamukong Suh not being fined. An injury update on defensive back Kyle Van Noy, and safety Glover Quin restructuring a deal with the team, plus some college football in the mitten. CMU won their season opener last night against Chattanooga in Mount Pleasant. MSU playing tonight against Jacksonville State and East Lansing, and Michigan rematching with Appalachian State tomorrow at the Big House. And finally, we'll talk. I will read out loud the article of the top 5 Red Wings players who need to step it up in the upcoming 2014-2015 season. First off, Tigers beat the Yankees 3-2 in the ninth inning on an Alex Avila walk-off single that almost carried out for a 3-run home run. Kyle Lobstein only gave up 1 run in his first major league start. He's had 2 major league appearances. He got the no decision. Rajai Davis also got an RBI single in yesterday's game. With that win, the Tigers creep up to a game and a half behind the Royals, who lost yesterday to the Twins 11-5 at Kauffman Stadium. Those are the Central Division, the American League Central Division standings right now. Tigers taking on another AL Central foe, the Chicago White Sox, starting tonight through Sunday afternoon. Tonight's game is at 8:10. The 4-game series also features a Saturday doubleheader, 1:10 and 7:10, in which Kyle Ryan will pitch. Justin Verlander starts tonight against Scott Carroll. Verlander is 11-11 with a 4.82 ERA. His lifetime versus the White Sox, the Southsiders, 15-13 and a 4.16 ERA. Scott Carroll this season is 5-8 with a 5.05 ERA. He has never pitched against the Tigers. going into tonight. Starting lineups. Rajai Davis will get a rest tonight, so here's how it goes. Leading off and playing second base, Ian Kinsler. Batting second and playing right field, Torrey Hunter. Miguel Cabrera will bat third and play first base. Victor Martinez will bat fourth and cleanup as the designated hitter. J.D. Martinez bats fifth and plays left field. Nick Castellanos, of course, bats sixth at third base. Alex Avila will catch and bat seventh. Eugenio Suarez will take his shortstop position and bat in the number 8 spot. And finally, in place of arresting Rajai Davis, Ezekiel Carrera will play center field and round out the lineup in the 9th spot. For the Chicago White Sox, Adam Eaton leads off at center field, followed by Alexei Ramirez at short, Jose Abreu at first, Adam Dunn DHing, former Tiger Avisail Garcia in right field, batting fifth, Connor Gillespie at third base, Tyler Flowers catching, Alejandro Diaz in left, and then Sanchez batting second. After yesterday's game against the Yankees at home at Comerica Park, Kyle Lobstein was sent back down to the AAA Toledo Mud Hens. After a great performance, Kyle Ryan was called up from the AA Erie Seawolves. And as I mentioned before, he will pitch in one of the doubleheader games on Saturday at U.S. Cellular Field. And they also called up Evan Reed from Toledo. Evan Reed missed most of his time not only on the DL, but in court or in jail too, for after being convicted of 2 counts of a third-degree sexual assault of a 45-year-old woman. And the Tigers finally designated relief pitcher Jose Ortega for assignment to make room for Mr. Reed. I also need to update the wild card standings. By the way, I still think the Tigers should make a trade for Bartolo Colon. And because he already cleared waivers, so he's eligible to be traded by August 31st, which is Sunday. Tigers and Mariners are still tied for the second wild card spot. The Tigers are 67 and 56. The Mariners are 68 and 57. Both teams are hanging on for dear life. And the Yankees now stand at 4 games back at 63 and 60. Now moving on to some Lions news. The Detroit Lions blanked former head coach Jim and defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz's Buffalo Bills 23-0 in New York. Kicker Nate Freese kicked in 4 field goals, including 2 exactly from 53 yards out. Jeremy Ross at wide receiver and punt and kick returner opened the touchdown, scoring from 1 yard out. And then Corey Fuller caught a touchdown pass from 25 out. Looking at the quarterback stats from last Thursday night in Buffalo. Matthew Stafford did not play. Dan Orlowski started the game going 7 of 11 passing for 39 yards in a quarter and a half of work. He led the first scoring drive, which was a 53-yard field goal by Freese. Kellen Moore played the rest of the game under center, going 17 of 28 passing for 178 yards and both touchdowns and a passer rating of 102.9. The entire offense collected 258 yards, while the Buffalo Bills only collected 162. The Lions' defense recorded 4 sacks and forced 3 turnovers in Buffalo territory, including interceptions by Isa Abdul-Quddus, all those were interceptions. The second one being Muhammad Cisse, and the third being Nate Ness. I still think the Bills aren't going to be a pretty good team. The Lions exposed them to just that last night. $23 points is not too much scoring, but as long as their defense steps up, especially against a team that is really struggling, the Lions are golden. They have a very easy home schedule, but a tough road schedule. But that's why head coach Jim Caldwell and his offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi and defensive coordinator Terrell Austin are there. The players that rested in that game were Matthew Stafford, of course, wide receivers Calvin Johnson and Golden Tate, running back Reggie Bush, center Dominic Raiola, offensive guard Rob Sims, and tight end Brandon Pettigrew. On defense, Ndamukong Suh, Rashean Mathis, cornerback, defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh, quarterback Rashean Mathis, defensive end Jason Jones, safeties James Ihedigbo and Don Carey, and linebacker Kyle Van Noy were resting. Well, except James Ihedigbo and Kyle Van Noy showed signs of injury. signs of injuries. Nate Freese was 4 for 4 actually on 3. It was it. Yeah, he kicked in 3 field goals, not 4. That was my mistake. It was 3 for 3 on field goal attempts. Two of them exactly from 53 yards out, and the other from 28. Tim Twentyman named Kellen Moore the offensive player of the game that night, and defensive end George Johnson on defense. There was a column written by Kyle Meinke about Kellen Moore outplaying Dan Orlovsky in the preseason, which still might not be enough to make the Detroit Lions. Meinke projected that Matthew Stafford and Dan Orlovsky still might make the 53-man roster, and Kellen Moore out as part of the practice squad. But the article that projects, in which Kyle Meinke projects the 53-man roster, doesn't say much about the quarterback's position. Kyle Meinke needs to deliver more research on that. Dan Orlovsky has had more experience as a backup quarterback in regular season play, but hasn't performed as well as Kellen Moore has this season. I think Kellen Moore, if you look at the stats this preseason, should be able to beat out Dan Orlovsky for that second quarterback spot and make the 53-man roster. So I'm definitely going to have to disagree with Kyle Meinke. The tailbacks position. Reggie Bush, Joique Bell, Theo Riddick, Jed Collins, Montel Owens, Michael LaShore, George Wynn, and Emil Iguanagu will be in the practice squad, or could be. Wide receivers: Calvin Johnson, Golden Tate, making the 53-man roster. Calvin Johnson, Megatron. Golden Tate, Kevin Ogletree, Chris Durham, Ryan Broyles, and Jeremy Ross. Who will be out? Corey Fuller, who kind of came close. Patrick Edwards and Andrew Peacock. At tight end, it'll be Brandon Pettigrew, Eric Ebron, and Joseph Fourier on the roster, and Michael Agnew and Jordan Thompson out. On the offensive line, Riley Reif, Rob Sims, Dominic Raiola under center, Larry Warford, Adrian Waddle, Corey Hilliard, Rodney Austin, Travis Swanson, and Cornelius Lucas. Michael Williams and Garrett Reynolds and Darren Keyton, Keyton, will sit on the bench. Now on defense. The defensive backs, Darius Slay, Rashean Mathis, Bill Bentley, Cassius Vaughn, Nevin Larson, Chris Greenwood, Glover Quin, James Ihedigbo, Jerome Copeland, and Isa Abdul Qudus as their secondary. Who will grab some pine at defensive back? Don Carey, Mohamed Cisse, and Nate Ness. They already, as we recall, the Lions released safety Jonte Green. The linebackers, DeAndre Levy, Stephen Tulloch, Ashley Palmer, Kyle Van Noy, Tahir Whitehead, and Travis Lewis. Who's out? Julian Stafford, Brandon Hepburn, and Shamari Benton. Kyle Van Noy, as mentioned before, will miss the start of the season with the off-season, no, not off-season, but a core muscle surgery, a preseason core muscle surgery, and perhaps longer if he's placed on short-term IR. Kyle Meinke writes that the Lions could opt to keep an extra linebacker around, and Travis Lewis is the next guy up. Before that injury, Kyle Meinke predicted that Travis Lewis would be cut. On the defensive line, Ezekiel Ansah, Jason Jones, Devin Taylor, George Johnson, Larry Webster, Ndamukong Suh, C.J. Mosley, Nick Fairley, and Karan Reed. Who are the players out? Andre Flulin, Jimmy Sadler McQueen, and Xavier Proctor. And finally, the specialists, including the kickers. Nate Freese, the kicker, Sam Martin, the punter, and Don Mulback, the snapper, the special team snapper for the extra points and field goals. And that's all they have. Nobody else tried out, except Giorgio Tavecchio, who was released earlier this week. And wide receiver T.J. Jones is still on the reserve / PUP physically unable to perform list, and DeJon Gomes is the only Lion on injured reserve. Ryan Broyles has been the X factor for the Detroit Lions this preseason. Which is why he should be one of the wide receivers on offense on the roster. There's an injury update article on Kyle Van Noy saying the Lions haven't ruled him out on short-term IR, and James Ihedigbo is hurting. Detroit Lions head coach Jim Caldwell didn't dismiss the possibility that Kyle Van Noy could be a candidate to begin the season on short-term injured reserve. He said that the team would issue a statement on Van Noy in the next day or two, which typically signals some kind of roster designation could be looming. Detroit must whittle its roster to 53 players by 4 p.m. Saturday. That's tomorrow. He had Van Noy earlier Thursday during the start of the game had surgery in his core muscle, which is otherwise known as a sports hernia. That injury typically requires at least 4 weeks of recovery and as many as 6 or more if the injury is severe. Caldwell stated, quote, "I'm not certain what the prognosis will be. We'll announce that in the next day or so after we've had a chance to discuss it thoroughly," unquote. Now remember, the Lions can't put Van Noy, a rookie linebacker, on the PUP list because that designation is reserved for players who have yet to practice or play in a game. That leaves short-term IR, injured reserve, which sidelines players for at least the first 6 weeks of the season. They are eligible to return up to practice at that point and could return to games as early as week 9. Detroit is off that week, which means Van Noy would be eligible to return November 9th against the Miami Dolphins if he heads to the short-term injured reserve. In other injury news, Jim Caldwell confirmed starting safety James Ihedigbo is in fact dealing with an injury of his own. He was one of the team's key free agent signings this offseason and did not play last week against Jacksonville. The team originally said it was simply veterans rest, but then he didn't play against Buffalo last Thursday. Several stars didn't participate, but he, along with Don Carey and Van Noy, were the only ones who didn't make the trip. Caldwell stated about Ihedigbo, "We felt like he could get treatment a little better at home than he could here in Buffalo. Keep him off the plane, just making sure he's getting the treatment he needs." It's unquote. So the Ihedigbo injury is unspecified as to which body part he is favoring. Jim Caldwell said Carey, who is dealing with a hamstring injury, was left home for similar reasons. So that's all Lions talk for now. Let's move on to college football. First off, the Michigan Wolverines. 4-star 2015 defensive lineman Darian Roseboro, just a little before 3 p.m., has announced his commitment to Michigan. He is eligible to play and will attend classes at the University of Michigan. Nick Baumgartner writes that Roseboro said, quote, "For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be attending the University of Michigan. I love the coaching staff and the fans, everything about Michigan," unquote. But that's good. Roseboro is 6'4", weighs 285 pounds. He's from Lincolnton, North Carolina. He's ranked 6th overall by Rivals.com at defensive tackle in the class of 2015, and the 42nd ranked player in the 42nd player in the Rivals.com Top 100. He's also number 7 overall strong side defensive end in 247sports.com's composite list. He also had offers from the Alabama Crimson Tide, the Auburn Tigers, the Florida Gators, the LSU Tigers, the Louisiana State Tigers, the Ohio State Buckeyes, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and a host of others. Per ESPN.com, Roseboro plans to enroll at Michigan in January. He had 125 tackles and 10 sacks last season for Lincolnton High School. He will join 5-star tight end Chris Clark, 4-star wide receiver Brian Cole, 4-star running back Mike Weber, 4-star quarterback Alex Malzone, 4-star offensive tackle Grant Newsom, 4-star corner Garrett Taylor, 4-star safety Tyree Kinnell, 4-star linebacker Darren Kirkland, 3-star offensive lineman John Runyon Jr., and kicker Andrew David, as the Wolverines will start their 2014 season at the Big House in a rematch against the Appalachian State Mountaineers, dating back to 2007 when the Mountaineers pulled by far the greatest upset in college football history, beating Michigan at the Big House 34-32 on a blocked field goal kick with 6 seconds left. Now to some Michigan State news. Just some Michigan, not a preview of Michigan State football, actually. The Spartans will take on the Jacksonville State Gamecocks tonight at 7:30. It'll be on the Spartan Sports Network, online at SSN, SpartanSportsNetwork.com. And on these, especially on these affiliates, WJIM AM 1240 and WMMQ FM 94.9 in Lansing, WJR AM 760 in Detroit, and on Sirius XM Channel 84 for those subscribed to satellite radio. Shalik Calhoun will lead Michigan State's defense. And 6 or 7 players will be seeing their first game action at Spartan Stadium Friday night. None may have traveled a tougher road than A.J. Troop, who has spent the last year recuperating from his 3rd ACL tear and hasn't played in a competitive football game since 2010. He got through it all by thinking about playing in Spartan Stadium. It was less than 4 years ago that Jacksonville State went to Ole Miss and came away with an upset overtime victory 49-48. Michigan State head coach Mark D'Antonio has called senior wide receiver Tony Lippett the Spartans' bell cow at the position in a deep and talented group. Lippett has emerged as the most consistent and reliable player. Mark D'Antonio earlier called this game a statement game and said, quote, "If things don't go right for us, it will not be because we have overlooked Jacksonville State." Jacksonville State, unquote. Comment of the week. Wait, forget that. Let's move over to the Central Michigan Chippewas. Last night, the Chippewas fell behind early in the first half, but came back and held on to beat the Chattanooga Mocs at Kelly Short Stadium in Mount Pleasant 20-16. They scored the game-winning touchdown with plenty of time left in the third quarter. First off, Henry Ribeiro kicked in a 47-yard field goal to put the Mocs up 3-0, and then Tommy Hudson scored a couple touchdown passes, one from 8 yards and the other from 70 out to lead 16-0 with the extra point, with the last extra point kick being blocked. But then CMU struck back with three touchdown passes from Cooper Rush to Jesse Kroll from 18 yards out in the second quarter, and the Mocs led 16-7 at halftime. The Chips would get their second touchdown reception courtesy of Thomas Rolls from 6 yards out. Their extra point sailed wide to the right and no good. That made it 16-13. But then the Chippewas would take the lead for good as Courtney Williams hauled in a 26-yarder on a two-play drive for 20 yards. Chips would go on to win 20-16. The game took 3 hours and 4 minutes. The Chippewas' next game will be on Saturday, September 6th, when they take on the Purdue Boilermakers at noon. That will be on That will be on 95.3 WCFX FM in Mount Pleasant, 98.5 FM WUPS in Houghton Lake, and all over the CMU Chippewas Sports Network, and online at cmuchippewas.com. And finally, the top 5 Red Wing players that need to step up. James McKinney from the Hockey Writers writes, Number 1, Darren Helm. According to Red Wings head coach Mike Babcock, Darren Helm is the best third-line center in the NHL. But that's only if he's healthy. Therein lies the biggest problem for Darren Helm. He can't stay healthy. He's injury prone. That's true. This has been documented in his very recent history. Of the Red Wings' last 164 games, Helm has only played in 49 of them. The worst part is it's not even one injury in particular. It's a variety of ailments that's keeping Helm from being the flashy speedster he was when he first broke into Detroit's lineup. If nothing else, the Red Wings need Darren Helm to play around 70 games this season and try to avoid injury. Just try to be careful. Try to be as careful as you can at all costs. He has only done this 3 times out of his 7-year career. His presence is needed by the Red Wings to keep defenders on their toes, which could lead to more opportunities on the breakaway. Otherwise, the Red Wings will continue to be the slow, predictable team that they've been in the last 2 years. Number 2, Johan Franzen. Like Darren Helm, Johan Franzen had trouble staying healthy last season. Unlike Helm, Franzen had only one thing that kept him off the ice. He missed 23 games due to concussion-like symptoms. However, when he came back, he was the same streaky goal scorer that the Red Wings and fans alike grew to love. When Franzen is in the zone, he's really in the zone. With so many games missed, Franzen was only able to score 16 goals. Half of what his usual production is. With a full healthy season, he can easily return to the 30 goal scorer that the Red Wings need him to be. Number 3, Danny DeKeyser. The young defenseman had his share of health problems as well. He missed 15 games of separated shoulder. Like last year, DeKeyser will enter training camp with huge expectations. With the Red Wings missing out on veteran defensemen on day one of the free agency market, in 2014, it's crucial for DeKeyser to develop into a top-end defenseman who can score and also man the puck along the blue line. With the full season to develop, it's easy to see DeKeyser making a huge difference. 23 points just isn't enough for a defenseman to contribute to a hockey team like the Red Wings. He needs to have at least 45 pounds as the team looks to him to be the new leader on defense for years to come. Number 4, Pavel Datsyuk. As written earlier by the hockey writers, Datsyuk was not immune to the injury bug. Knee problems caused him to miss 37 games. However, he returned to the lineup and led the team in scoring during the playoffs with 5 points. As long as he stays healthy this season, the Red Wings have a much better chance to be a better overall team. He may not be the captain, but he's associate captain, and he's definitely the pulse of the team. They go as far as he goes. And number 5, Jimmy Howard, the last line of defense. When all else fails, especially on defense, your team goes as far as your goaltender can take you. That's exactly what happened to the Red Wings last season. Nicholas Lidstrom retired and Brad Stewart went back to the San Jose Sharks, leaving subpar help for Howard in net. He missed the better part of a month due to an MCL sprain, so it's easy to give him an out for his struggles. Well, that injury has nothing to do with his struggles. He's not an elite goaltender yet. But when healthy, he's easily capable of winning 35 games and having a .920 save percentage. Despite having mediocre defense in front of him, Howard should have no problem going back to the goaltender we all know he could be. And that is all I've covered for tonight's for episode 44 of Taylor's Detroit Sports on Spreaker. Remember, you can catch this archived and all episodes and episode 45 upcoming after all game day action, including the Tigers and the Spartans tonight on iHeartRadio. Also, add me on Facebook, Taylor Phillips. Like my Facebook page, Taylor Phillips' Detroit Sports page. Join my Facebook group, Taylor Phillips' Detroit Sports Group, and follow me on Twitter at DT2 Phillips. My Facebook personal profile is facebook.com/PHILL1DT. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Talk to you later tonight.